All right, it is 6 o'clock and we will begin our program. So hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this Wheaton conversation titled Paved with Promise, a virtual conversation about the impact of the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act. We are joined by feature artists Nina Pan, Nadine LaFond, and Pepe Santana. Our moderators are Dr. Iveta Pirgova and Dr. Marian Jacobson. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pamela Weichman, your host and the Director of Education and Artist Services at WheatonArts. I am broadcasting from Southern New Jersey, which I recognize as traditionally the land of the Lenni Lenape. WheatonArts and Wheaton Conversations is presented by PNC Arts Alive, the United Nations International Year of Glass, and the Art Alliance for Contemporary Glass. We thank them for their support. Through membership, donations, and shopping at shop.wheatonarts.org, you as well can show your support. Please consider exploring these options so we can continue to offer free programs like this. It is my pleasure to introduce my co-host and our moderator for this program, Dr. Iveta Pirgova. She is the Director of Folklife and Cultural Studies at WheatonArts. Over the years, Iveta has worked with more than 60 ethnic and regional communities in New Jersey, striving to preserve and share their cultural heritage. With a primary interest in cultural expressions of ethnicity and identity, as well as relativity of aesthetics and artistry, she has designed a series of educational and public programs, including more than 29 major exhibitions, 9 festivals, and more than 500 performances, workshops, and classes in folk and traditional arts. Iveta, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Pam.
Our next moderator for this program is Dr. Marian Jacobson. Dr. Jacobson is a folklorist, ethnomusicologist, and author who writes, teaches, and produces public programming on world music, culture, and the arts. Dr. Jacobson earned her PhD in music from New York University and has taught at NYU, the State University of New York at New Paltz, and the City University of New York. She is currently serving as Director of New Jersey Folklife at Perkins Center for the Arts, where she leads a variety of programs and oral history research projects. Dr. Jacobson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Pam, for these nice introductions. And it is now my pleasure to introduce our special guest artist for this program, Nina Pan. Nina grew up listening to classical music and took a few years of violin lessons in China. When her local Huaxia Chinese school in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, started offering lessons on the guzheng, she jumped on the opportunity to learn from her talented teacher, April Yang. As active volunteer in the community, Nina currently serves as a board member of the Asian American Association of South Jersey. Welcome, Nina.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Nadine LaFond. Nadine LaFond is a vocalist, songwriter, and a mixed media artist whose work spans music and visual arts. Drawing from Caribbean and American roots, her songs create a unique sound shaped by over 20 years of live performance and collaboration. Inspired by her Haitian heritage, she combines abstraction, symbolism, and figurative elements to address social, cultural, and technological themes. Nadine also provided long-term residencies in traditional Haitian arts for the Millville schools, as well as residencies in Creole singing for the New Jersey Folk and Traditional Arts at Home program. Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you so much, Yvette. I'm honored.
And our third special artist is Pepe Santana. Juan Pepe Santana is a musician, educator, and instrument maker based in Stanhope, New Jersey. Born in Ecuador, Pepe moved to the US in the 60s, where he has performed and taught Andean traditions for several decades. Pepe plays over 24 native wind instruments, flutes, panpipes, and whistles, and a variety of string instruments, charangos, mandolins, bandurria, tipple, guitars. His emphasis on Asian sounds and rhythms has defined him as a true spokesperson of traditional Andean music. Pepe is a master folk musician in the Folk Arts Apprenticeship Program of the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and was awarded the National Merit and title of Great Gentleman by the Ecuadorian government. Welcome, Pepe.
Thank you very much.
Now that we know who we all are, I would like to ask Dr. Jacobson to tell us about the project that we are starting with this conversation.
Thank you, Iveta and Pamela, for setting up this conversation. It's a really important one to have. Shout out to these incredible artists. There's so much knowledge and accomplishments among them. And thank you, everyone out there in webinar land. We have 50 people signed up. That is really, really encouraging because we need to be talking about these issues and coming together as a community to continue that dialogue. So I'd like to start, before I jump into the legislation that you see being signed here, let's start with a thought exercise. Imagine if the immigration system we had in 1960 was the one we had today. Imagine if almost no one from Asia and the Latin American countries were admitted to the US. Think of how white and homogenous America was at a time that I could vaguely remember, when the only Latinos you'd see on TV was Ricky Ricardo on Isle of Lucy. This is the system that we would have had in 2025. This chart, the two pie charts on the right give us two astounding data points. Between 1960 and 2013, the number of foreign-born U.S. residents from Asia was 5 times. It quintupled from 1960. Foreign-born residents from Mexico and Latin America, and the Caribbean, or the Americas shown in blue, more than tripled to become the largest group of immigrants in the United States. That represented a really remarkable change. While America has always been a nation of immigrants and a nation of immigrants from around the world, this piece of legislation helped to make a far more diverse and multicultural nation. And that's why we're celebrating the Hart Celler Act 60 years later. You know what? I feel like a number of people on the registration list, many of my friends and colleagues who are doing work in this area might be familiar with this, but for some of you, it might be very new. Think of it this way. This is like the most momentous, consequential law that Congress signed in the 20th century. I'm going to put that out there. This is the most significant piece of legislation ever passed by Congress. It's amazing that to think of what Congress accomplished back then. Hart Celler was the major turning point in governing our nation's immigration system. It changed how we welcome people from abroad and whom we welcome into the US. Hart Celler opened the door to immigrants from around the world, and in many ways, it created the modern system of immigrant admissions that we still have in place today. Yes, these laws are still on the books today in 2025. From the 1920s until 1965, immigrant admissions were based on the national origins quota system. That system established the ability to get a visa based on where the immigrant came from, national origins, and on their race. And that system explicitly favored folks from Western and Northern Europe, like the Irish folks depicted here, while discriminating against everyone else from Southern and Eastern Europe and from the Asian countries. Check out the next slide. Asian Americans, especially Chinese, were completely excluded and were subject to virulent and violent attacks. And alongside Asians, other immigrants who were considered white were denied entry to the States. After 1965, opponents of the system spent decades working to dismantle the racist quota system, and Hart Celler was the product of those struggles. In replacing national origins as the main deciding factor in who could enter the country legally, lawmakers put in place another preference system. That system favored family reunification, your spouse, children, siblings, etc., first and foremost. and to a lesser extent, employment-based migration, the system that allowed people like our panelist Nina Pan's father, a talented microbiologist, to come from China to New Jersey and Philadelphia to develop life-saving treatments for autoimmune diseases. The general structure we put in place is still the system we have today. As important as this legislation is on its 60th anniversary, it's important to consider its legacy from the perspective of people who lived through it. So our project is called Paved with Promise, a celebration of the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act. And in the first step, which is already underway, we're doing interviews with people who have experienced immigration from 1965 to the present. And we're doing about 20 interviews. We have 25 people who have already stepped up to be interviewed, including the 3 wonderful artists on the panel today. And their perspective is so important to learn more about what the immigration experience was like from their perspective, and that can help contribute to the conversation about immigration at a moment when it's very politically charged. Naturally, since both Paved with Promise co-leads, Iveta and myself, are folklorists who work in community art centers, our first round of interviews is heavy on artists and tradition bearers, and their voices reaffirm why arts and culture matter to the communities. Artists create spaces of promise. Traditional artists provide direction and hope in navigating uncharted waters as the current administration threatens the promise and the premise of immigration. Artists matter a lot, so we are so grateful and fortunate to hear from 3 tradition bearers who have stepped up to share their experiences on Hart Celler, with immigration and its legacies, and better yet, offer a taste of the cultural traditions they've devoted their lives and careers to preserving. So now let's turn it back over to Iveta and our superstar panelists.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Marian. It's good to tell everybody about this act because this is what inspires our program. And the reason why we called it Paved with Promise is an excerpt from what Ted Kennedy said when they were signing the act in 1965. And he said that our streets may not be paved with gold, but they are paved with promise. And continued further. And that is why we called it Paved with Promise. And for this project, all the 5 folklife centers in the state of New Jersey are working together. We'll be doing the interviews. We're planning traveling exhibits and a variety of educational programs, including in schools programs on this project. But today we're launching the project with this conversation. Over the years, this act has been celebrated by many arts and cultural organizations because of its importance to the cultural face of the country. And I just recently heard that the City Law in New York mounted a major exhibition for its 50th anniversary. And now here we are celebrating the 60th anniversary. To begin our conversation, I would like to ask all 3 of our guest artists to please share your story or your family story of coming to live in the United States. Why did you come? Did you face any challenges or did you encounter something that you find strange here when compared with your homeland? Who would like to begin?
I could start.
Okay.
First of all, I wanted to thank WheatonArts for inviting me to participate in this really meaningful project. Like you said, in this current political environment especially, I think it's more important than ever to have our voices heard, have our cultures preserved. I like what Avida has said once before that, before we wanted to be a melting pot. Everybody comes in, we want to be like Americans, but now we want to be a sellable. Everybody brings what's rich about their culture, and that makes our life more interesting. So I feel that's kind of like my life story too. I grew up in Shanghai, China. It's a pretty cosmopolitan city, but back in the 80s, it was just, you know, one of the cities in China. Everybody pretty much looked the same, dressed the same, got paid the same. But that was when China started to open up to Western countries. And my father was lucky enough, I guess, to was able to get a exchange scholar position with Merck. So he came and my mom came. A few years later, my sister and I immigrated to US, 1989, we came here. And that was when my world was really turned upside down because everything was different. I started high school here at a suburb outside of Philadelphia. Everything from the system, school system, things were taught differently. In China, the class where you go into, say, 9th grade, you are in one class of 50 students, one teacher who's your master teacher, and then you have other subject teacher comes into your class to teach you different subject, but you're going to be with those 50 students and that group of teacher for the next 4 years until you graduate. Not here. The first thing we encountered was we have to select our classes, which was a very novel phenomenon because everything was just given to us. You take these classes, there is no choice. But here we have to make decision about what kind of classes we have to take, what kind of electives we can make the decision of taking or not taking. So all of a sudden there's a lot of freedom to our lives, to our academic lives in any way. The other thing I noticed different was when we were filling out forms, our names are written differently. In China, we put our family name first, the order of names. We have put our family name first, then our given name. So my name is Nina Pan here, but in China, it's actually Pan Nina. That would be the way you write on any official documents. So that was something that took a while to get used to. And the high school is challenging for anyone, especially for kids who came in the middle, started 10th grade, didn't know how everything worked. I remember first day of school, my sister and I were the only 2 Chinese in our whole school. And we're just waiting to be called to whichever room we needed to go to. And we were just sitting there holding hands like any Chinese kids would do when they were out with friends. And we noticed people were kind of pointing at us and kind of laughing a little bit. And we didn't know what was going on until a little bit later, we asked around and found out in US, especially in the 80s, people of same sex do not hold hands or walking with their arms next to each other. So they thought maybe we were lesbians. So for that little town, lesbians were not frequently seen. So that's why they were looking at us and kind of pointing and laughing and just thought, wow, there is a rare occurrence of gay Chinese girls. So I guess from that moment on, we tried to fit in and no more hand holding in school or in public. But that was something that I remembered until this day. That just kind of stuck with me, how different it was back then. If anyone else have anything else wanted to jump in, I don't want to kind of take all the time. So don't be shy and just stop me at any time.
Nina, before we can continue on this topic, I just wanted to read out loud to know that Marilyn White put in the Q&A box. She corrected something that Marian said in her introduction. She said, for decades, I've had an issue with the slogan, America is a nation of immigrants, as it excludes native indigenous Americans and those brought here as enslaved Africans. And of course, we completely agree with what you say, Marilyn. It's just because Marian was very focused on this project she spoke about immigrants, not because she believes that we're all immigrants. So
Yes, for sure.
the example that you gave, Nina, is really funny and nice, because for many people don't understand how little things are different when they come to this country. Sometimes they assume that something is similar to their homeland, and it happens to be very different. I personally had a similar example when I invited a colleague to a dinner, and he was very surprised, and he said it's better to be lunch. And I said, okay, lunch be it. And only years later, I learned that if you invite someone out for dinner, you might mean that you are asking them out for a date, which is very different from my homeland. I mean, going for dinner is just dinner, and it's never assumed unless it is specifically articulated. So the little things that makes the difference. So if somebody wants to continue what Nina began.
For me, it was a very interesting experience because even though I was born in the United States, I actually had the same experience that the rest of my family did. Everybody in my family was born in Haiti, and I was the only one born in Brooklyn, New York. But at age 2, I went back to Haiti because I had met the siblings that I heard about. My mom actually left my siblings with her mother, and she came to the States by herself. And at the time when my parents were leaving, there was a great deal of political turmoil. And it's not like here where you can, because of the people, and I'm going to stress that, any right that we enjoy, we do so in thanks of the people. You know, the people fought for that. So things like freedom of speech, for example, is not something that you can do in IT. It's a very strict culture. And so it's very dangerous, you know, depending on who is in power to go against, you know, that power. And my grandfather, and also with things going terribly, you know, economically, um, my grandfather sent each of the kids out to outside of the country to start a new life. So it was either France, uh, Canada, because there were options. It would make the language easier, or the United States. And when my mom's time came, she chose the United States, and my grandfather took care of all of the um, details and sent her off to start a new life. So my sister and brother were born, and so she left them with my grandmother to start, you know, everything. And then my father joined her a year later, and then I was born. And so I grew up speaking 4 languages. I thought that's what speaking meant. Like you know, expressed yourself in all of these different ways, right? So it wasn't a big deal. Uh, but I was only 2, so I was mixing 4 languages with baby talk. And my parents decided like they should send me back to Haiti. Would be the good time for me to meet my siblings. And so my memories, in terms of like deep memories, really began there. Uh, I still have, you know, a powerful longing for travel because being on that airplane and looking outside of the window was magic. And so till this day, you know, I take the window seat, and I have a love for fluffy towels at the hotel. You know, it was this whole beautiful thing. But when I got there, it was a completely different world. And my mother tells me that when I turned 4 years old, that's when I started drawing. I started drawing on my grandmother's wall outside with chalk, because like I believe the land itself just, sparked, my creativity. And that the life there, I mean, once you walked into your parents' house, regardless of where you lived, you're an Haiti. Whatever is outside is outside. The United States is outside the door, but inside the house, you might as well be on the land. And Haiti is a very African-centered place. Like I often say, Haiti is just another way of saying Africa, because we are made of 21 indigenous nations from the continent. We're Alkebulan people. And we fought hard to keep those traditions together. And so it's a very formal way, to grow up, very, very formal. And at the same time, there's this joy, of living. You dance because you're alive, not because you're going to a party. You sing because you feel it within you. You're cooking with your mom, you know. So like coming here, it was a lot more casual in some ways. I completely forgot all of the languages, I forgot English, I forgot Spanish and had to start all over again. So I remember that, like coming to the States and learning English was a matter of survival. So you had to really master that language. And as a child, you pick it up very quickly. I do remember many things that were different, and it just had to do with the way that you communicated with people. There are lots of rules where we come from as far as how you engage and what's considered respectful. The hierarchy, between the parent and the child, we are African people, so that respect for the elders is a powerful thing, so the engagement between adults and children in this country was shocking, the way that people, would go back and forth, the way kids would just say whatever, they wanted. We didn't understand. We were very much embraced because we, interestingly enough, IT, even though it's a French-speaking country, it's a Latin country. And so we were welcomed by different Latino communities, as well as my mother explained, Italian communities as well, because they understood what it felt like not to know the language. They also had this tradition of the garden. Your medicine is your garden. When you're cooking your food, you grow it right there, in the backyard. So there were just different communities that just kind of came together, regardless of their background, to support each other. There was already a strong Haitian community there to, welcome her, of friends and a few family members. But just for us kids just coming along, it was a challenge, trying to figure out, the way that people communicated. But after a while, being a kid, all you cared about was whether you know how to play freeze tag or not. You'd figure it out, and you just, kind of destroyed those, barriers. As an African, of course, we wanted to know what all the other African kids are doing, because that's the thing, that one of the most poignant things to us that really took us by, I would say, that shocked us, because as an African-centered place, the first Black nation, that came from the destruction of slavery, everyone around you, is African, like yourself. You see yourself everywhere. The president is African, the people at the, airport are African, like da da da, so we never had this idea that like we were invisible, or that we had to fight, to participate. When we came here, that was the shock, this idea that we're somehow othered. And so it was very clear to us as children that these things are constructs. This is made up and it's nonsense. These people are crazy, and you have to find the ones that make sense, among you, those that have similar experiences that you do. So a lot of immigrant kids connected, a lot of immigrant families connected. So you had neighborhoods where everybody were the elders. We came from that, many of us, whether it was from Korea or from, different parts of the Caribbean or, Italian or, Latin, whatever it happened to be. We understood each other in that way because where we come from, everybody's auntie, everybody's uncle, and everyone is responsible for one another. So as a kid, including the teenagers, were looking out, for us little kids, so you had to come together to support one another in this construct, like we saw it as a construct.
That is very, very interesting, Nadine, because in a way it put you in between cultures, growing up with different cultures and understanding how different or maybe similar they are. But the very fact that you have the comparison broadens horizons of a kid, which is really valuable for the adult afterwards.
It can be. It's always a balancing act, till this day for me as an artist, as a human being, I'm always trying to achieve balance. That's a big, big theme in my life, and my mission here is achieving balance, because in one side, yes, as you said, that could be something that really broadens you as a person. But then there are other times when it's just turmoil, where I'm not this or that, right? There are points where I'm just not Haitian enough because of what I've learned here. And as an artist, the most open of minds, so, and growing up speaking four languages made me intensely curious. I loved learning. So I wanted to understand everyone. And I considered new ways of doing things. And as the youngest kid too, I had a lot more leeway. My parents went from being extraordinarily strict with us to really admiring the way that Americans were friends with their children, and they wanted to try that. And so because I was the last kid, the other kid said, you try it, because we don't trust them. They'll just use it against us.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I was always the kid who stood up for other kids ever since I was little, not only my siblings, but my fellow kids. So I would always push those boundaries, and that wasn't always pretty. I'm still, like, as far as my inner child is concerned, I still empower her. I'm still questioning my elders. I'm still pushing those boundaries. I'm still questioning both of the cultures, because I have an intimate understanding of each of them, but there are times where I don't feel American enough, and there are times I don't feel Haitian enough. And
Interesting. Yeah, I understand what you mean. Pepe, how about you?
How about me? I should start by thanking the WheatonArts Center and the moderators, of course, for the opportunity to share my thoughts with the viewers of this program. I arrived from Ecuador back in 1964. At that time, the US had in place a law called the National Origins Formula. It had been in position since the 1920s. This formula heavily, Marion talked about that, favored immigrants from Western and Northern Europe, while restricting the immigration from other countries. Now, how did this affect me? As a folk musician from the Andes Mountains, the music I like and practice is the music that reflects the traditions of the indigenous people of the Andes Mountains. When I arrived in New York in 1964, I could not hear any music that would resemble the sounds of the Andes Mountains. Back then, I used to listen to WRUL radio that had a program called Radio New York Worldwide with Alan Weiser. You should remember the people from my time. This man, very important in the folk world. During his programs, he would present folk musicians from the US mainly. That was time of Pete Seeger, of John Baez, Robert de Comier and his singers, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and many, many, many others. I never heard a South American folk singer during these programs. There was another program directed by a person with last name Evans, Ruth Evans, they said, that occasionally would play songs from Bolivia or Peru. Things began to change in 1965 when President Johnson signed into law the National Act of 1965. The act aimed to eliminate racial discrimination in immigration policies and was influenced by the civil rights movement. It's important to remember that. This is how the national origins formula of 1920s was abolished. It was a transformative step in the US immigration policy because it reshaped the nation's diversity and inclusivity.
I want to thank Pepe for mentioning that. It's so important to refer back to the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, which Johnson also signed, and the importance of activists, not just immigrant advocates, but civil rights activists, feminists, African American activists, helped to contribute to the changes in the system.
Yeah.
It would be impossible to imagine Hart Celler without all the hard and dangerous work that our activist forebears did for us.
Yeah.
Possibly my family wouldn't have, made it here today. So, I'm really interested to know what that looked like for you, Pepe. Did you notice what happened after 1965?
Definitely, yes.
What was that like?
He was just talking about that.
Yeah, it didn't take too long in 1965 when I could hear the enchanting sounds of the high Andes in the US. For example, Simon and Garfunkel, you know them, they presented us with their version of El Condor Pasa, right?
Oh yeah,
And
made popular by Paul Simon.
that was a Peruvian folk song.
Yeah.
With English lyrics depicting a hammer and a nail metaphor. A beautiful song, beautiful lyrics. But they didn't depict the condor, which is a symbol of many Andean countries. The bird, the big bird. By then I had met some Andean musicians. This is 1965. And we began to perform music from the Andes during Hispanic radio and television shows. The people from different cultures and cultural backgrounds started to learn about our traditional sounds. And we began to perform in venues attended by English-speaking people. That's how I began to see the transformation. Okay? We presented workshops, recitals, and concerts in libraries, museums, schools. We reached the stages of Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, and other important venues. For 2 years, we toured the United States with a flute caravan organized by Carol Winsett, a flutist, very well known. The caravan was formed by flutists from different parts of the world. We had China, India, Africa, Europe, and the Americans. It was a wonderful event. It was the National Act of 1965 at work. Hey, nowadays, there are festivals of Andean music, dance, crafts all over this country. And I mean, you have seen that at the WheatonArts Center, or where you are, my friend Marion. In New Jersey alone, we gather to celebrate Andean cultures at various festivals, festivals that project existing Andean traditions, with most of the manifestations that have managed to survive more than 500 years of cultural colonialism. Andean music, traditionally speaking, consists of acoustic music. Whenever we hear Andean music acoustically, that is the sound that comes from the Andes. Now, with the influence of electronics, things have begun to change. But that's okay. That is another aspect of grouping, of absorbing the influence of technology.
That is yet another transformation that you can notice over the years, I guess.
Right.
But I think that you and Nina and Nadine already began shifting the conversation to what I wanted to ask you next, is to focus on the importance of preserving your cultural heritage, because you all mentioned that was important, but I wanted to ask why and how do you preserve it, and if possible, you all musicians, please give us examples on your instruments.
Excellent question. You know, if I answer your question in the proper way, they will continue to label me old-fashioned. Well, that's okay. I can live with that. You know, because in actuality, there are many communities that have preserved their tradition with acoustic music. You know? And that is my part. That is my objective. That is I aim to do that in this country, always. It is easier to continue dispersing the importance of our cultural identity based on what we really are and what we have. But it's based also on our traditional values. That's all it is. Our cultural manifestations, like our music, our dances, like our languages, are very important. Our DNA depends on that. And no matter how we look, we have to preserve it. It's very important for the good of the world. That's all I can tell you. I don't know if you have any questions.
Well said, well said.
I just want to add that I personally, I feel like songs, dances, like Nadine said, it's not just entertainment, right? What you do after work, it's really something, especially folk songs. It tells stories and it's passed down from generation to generations. And your traditional instruments, it's something that carries a history of its own. And that's what drew me to my instrument. I was always, like I said, I always liked music, listened to music and sing. But when my kids were born, I think that's when I really wanted to thinking about preserving my culture. I think prior to that, I was busy working, going to school. I wanted to be part of that melting pot. I want to be American. I would to be a Chinese or Chinese American wasn't as important. But as my kids were born, I realized that I want to pass my culture, my lineage, my language and arts to them. So we took them to our local Chinese school where they teach us Chinese language, folk dance, and traditional instruments. And that's when I started to taking lessons on the guzheng, which is called Chinese zither. And I'll just show you quickly what it looked like here, which is right in front of me. And we have some video that we can share later because due to some sound effect, I was not able to play it today. But yeah, and also, because of my children, I got involved with the AASJ, which is the Asian American Alliance in South Jersey. The goal is for us, for our organization to help the local South, or especially South Jersey Asian communities, AAPI groups, to help them with language issues, or if they have legal issues, school issues. We were able to, through our efforts of many years, able to have Cherry Hill district add Chinese as a second language to their curriculum. So we actually have a celebration this Sunday at Cherry Hill West High School. It is an annual celebration to celebrate May AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander Month. There will be food, there will be music, there will be dances, a lot of that. So everybody's welcome to stop by if you're able to. Please check us out. At the end of today's presentation, there will be a flyer with more information about the date and time and the location. So that's my story about my instrument.
That is very interesting, because I've noticed when I work with different ethnic communities in our area, that this is one of the most popular strategy, having a community school.
Yeah.
And send children to this school, usually on Sundays, where they will learn language, they will learn how to dance, they will learn some of literature, history from their homelands, they will learn some visual traditional arts, music, and this is one of the ways to pass it on to the younger generation.
Right, and we even had calligraphy class at one point. So, yeah.
I recall when we had a flute caravan for 2 consecutive years. There was a Chinese flutist. I don't know what happened to him. He moved to the States. His name is Tim Liu. Is the name familiar to you?
No, unfortunately.
He was a fabulous flutist. Fantastic. I don't know what happened. He used to live in Chinatown, I think in New York.
I'm sure there are many talented Chinese flutists. Yeah.
It's difficult to know all of them.
Right, yeah.
I think for me, as a vocalist, it's a mix. It's a balancing act, because one of the important ways that I keep my tradition going is connecting the roots of Haitian music, traditional spiritual music, folklore music, as well as on the visual art side, the masters from many different schools on IET that go way back. I use those as inspiration and jumping off points to create newer works that continue to tell that story. So I kind of balance between you know, a folk artist and a contemporary artist. I do them both at once. In the same way that the music inspires the visual arts inspires the music right back. But in terms of music, it goes again, like there's a powerful connection to the African American community here, where whenever you're talking about Caribbeans and musical traditions or new music that had gotten started because of the powerful connection between the Caribbean community and the American community, African American community. Hip hop is a very, easy example of that, of those two communities coming together, with Cool Herc and the New York scene, right? For me, like my father used to bring home records every week. They fell in love, my parents, with American music. And so every week there was a new record, and for them it was Motown and, different, R&B at the time. we grew up on music from Haiti, Mexico, Cuba, so Buena Vista Social Club, Celia Cruz, was on all the time, but so was Aretha Franklin, who could do no wrong in the house, and all of these, other artists, and not just musically either. And I want to clear something up too. I tend to use the word African a lot because I'm a Pan-Africanist. So, sometimes I mean continental Africans, sometimes I mean Caribbean Africans, and sometimes I mean Africans here in the United States, African American. So I'm talking about all of us, and I put a hoop around us all when I say that. But to make it clear, as far as like what we noticed, coming here, and as an artist, what I would grapple with on a regular basis is the in intentional divide and conquer trick that was going on when we got here. It was told to us wherever we went, and continental Africans can, attest to this as well as Caribbeans. Oh, stay away from African American people. Like something was wrong, right? And that was being told to us as kids. Kids don't care. As soon as we get through the language barrier, the first thing that we do is connect with one another. So over time, we forged, those friendships, and the African American community became our rock, so that like, because as Black people, there was like a whole other stumbling block that we had to deal with because we were othered from everybody, and so coming from a nation like Haiti, which is so deeply African, and then to come to this place that, was filled with everybody, we always hung out with everybody. My parents saw to that, but it was a stark difference when we experienced racism the way that we did. Not that there was an just colorism throughout Haiti too, which is also a disease, but we were raised understanding that that's also the divide and conquer trick. It's a form of Stockholm syndrome, so you have to educate yourself outside of that. So we grew up on that kind of revolutionary thinking. So it made, sense. It was easy to connect with African American community. So now when you're talking about the music, again, you're storytellers. As Pepe said, it's in our DNA. And so we share that that need to pass the stories down. It's our responsibility through the music to pass down the principles, the values, of our original indigenous land, all the different nations that came, out of that continent. And so for us, it was specific stories, from IT, the songs, that we grew up listening to, and putting to memory, and sometimes like even as kids, growing up and listening to the parents having conversations with their friends, it's called audience, and it's a bunch of intellectuals, coming together. And by intellectuals, I don't mean like a class system, because coming here too, another thing that would happen, depending on the countries that you are coming from, your your degree probably was not respected, right? Depending, because there were countries that were favored and those that weren't. Of course, African countries weren't. So you would come here, all the work that you had done in your home country means nothing. And now you have to start from absolute scratch. So you could have been a professor back home and you're sweeping floors here in the United States, right? And alongside farmers and workers and everything. So everyone just did whatever they had to do for their kids. So it was typical to see folks working 2 to 3 jobs, with pride, doing whatever they had to do in this country. And then when you would, be at home, somebody's basement would turn into the bal, right? So you didn't go to the club, you went to Madame and Monsieur's, house, and they had transformed their basement, and they had, balls basically in their basement. And that's how we kids learn how to dance, so we would be all dressed up and, sitting down, and some friend of my parents would come and say, may I have this dance, please? And then that's how you learn how to dance, merengue and compa and all that, very, very traditional. And at the same time, outside of the door was like this, American life, so we're doing both, like we're doing a super, super formal thing. And then outside with our friends, we're learning this whole new way of being. And then add to that as artists, like breaking, boundaries and deconstructing, so having to, go back and forth between those worlds. So for me, at age 13, discovering the blues changed my life, jazz and the blues. And what I realized in listening to traditional music and Vodou music, for example, it wasn't very long that I realized, oh, that ain't nothing but the blues. Wow, okay, and so I started making those, connections, and then seeing how the storytelling was similar, and of course tracing that right back to the continent. So I kind of melded those worlds together. And so the music that I make today have deep roots in, both of these places. So I keep the Haitian tradition in a new way. Whether I'm singing like, straight traditional music from Haiti or music that is inspired, by other, traditions, Latin traditions, definitely. Um, you know, it-
Yeah.
yeah, just
This is phenomenal, yes, and it's very complicated.
it is very complicated.
I'm afraid that we might not be able to unravel
Yeah.
all the complicated issues,
Yeah.
topics.
So,
But
two
I
things.
just discovered that the time flies and it's almost 7 o'clock. But I wanted to mention that people in the chat shared some of their stories as to how they saw the transformation and the change after 1965.
Yeah. Can you read out Michael Esposito's comment?
Like to,
He-
yes, Mariam.
That's
I was about.
fantastic.
Yeah, Michael just wrote African American cultural organizations in this area paved the way for those of us who followed in their footsteps, such as Latinos. When the community began to organize, we were mentored by them and owe them a debt of gratitude. And
That's right.
Michael is a president of the Raíces Culturales Latinoamericanas and works with artists from Central and South America and the Caribbeans, of course, in the Philadelphia area and New Jersey. And more recently, even he and the co-founder of the same organization, Yolanda Alcorta, made a cultural corridor between
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. through our area up to New York. But I think that the participants in our conversation may lose patience because they've been waiting for the examples of your music.
Yeah. Could before we transition to the music, I would just like to have a concluding statement from each of the artists, if they could just answer one question. All three of you have stepped forward to be interviewed for Paved with Promise. Why did you decide to share your story? And what is maybe the one thing you hope people will take away from it? Feel free to jump in.
I think
All right. I think right now we're at a time where everything's coming apart, where our communities are being attacked, where the divide and conquer trick is at its most active, let's say that, right now. And I think it's really important to have this conversation. I'm glad that I was invited to have this dialogue. I want to encourage the rest of the community to use this small little conversation that we're having about our experiences, um, whether creatively or personally, to start the dialogue amongst ourselves and create true community. It's really, time when these forces are coming against us to respond with the collective mindset that we all belong to one another, right? Not to pretty talk issues that we're still grappling with amongst, ourselves. We need, powerful truth right now. We require uncomfortable truth and uncomfortable conversations. But to at least start the dialogue so that we're aware that we need to create communities, go back to what the ancestors have taught us. We're not starting from scratch. The blueprints were left behind by the elders and the ancestors. So we need to go back to what we've learned collectively and think in a circular way, right? Bring that hoop back, to us. Including, our indigenous, family, our relatives, to educate ourselves on what worked here before we all came, and give a big thanks, like all of us, as all of the indigenous, all of the immigrant communities, to I want to reiterate that, give props, give thanks to the African American community that made that wait possible, even when those systems are in place to separate us, to pit us against one another. Time and time again, African American communities have showed up for everybody. You see African American people at the helm, leading and creating what we take for granted now as what community organizing is.
Yeah.
That comes, yes, that is the blueprint. I just want to make sure to say that, to give thanks, for why, we're all here and have the ability to be here. Yeah, so proper thanks. And then also just to remember that we are at a time right now where it's getting tough, and we need to come together as, one people, celebrating those differences.
True. And we have the blueprints, and not just the African Americans, but the indigenous communities, the Native American tribes.
Exactly, as I said.
They've gone through the same difficulties, and they've fought for themselves for years, and they experience difficulties even today. So, but they've developed strategies that everybody can learn from. So, as you said, looking back to ancestral teachings is
Right.
to begin this.
Starting with this place, going back to indigenous ways, connecting with indigenous peoples for how to move forward, so that we're not using the same formula that doesn't work, that hasn't worked. We need to go back to the original way. So yeah, for sure, like, a collective, of children of immigrant peoples, but we need to go back to indigenous ways in order to do it right moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think Nadine said pretty much everything, and she really expressed it beautifully. I just wanted to add one more factor. I feel like fear is a big factor now in today's culture, and the reason I wanted to be involved is I wanted to remind people that we've been through this before, and we can get through it again as not just individuals, but together we can get through anything. Yeah.
I would say that, like Wheaton or like Perkins, I had to join this program, going back to the question of Marin, because is a way, there's some road to humanize our fellow friends.
Yeah.
So I couldn't refuse to be in this program. In fact, I am so happy to be here with you. Thank you very much.
We're so happy to have you, Pepe.
It is wonderful.
Thank you.
Meanwhile,
Nina.
we have a comment in the chat, led by Ty Gould. She said, yes, indeed, to you, Nadine, we must keep the community together and support the children. And she is from the Lene Lenape community in our area. So we are all on the same page.
Yes, I also wanted to give a shout out to two members of the audience who have stepped up for family members and themselves to be interviewed. Thank you. So I want to recognize Anjum Rashid, who is an immigrant from Pakistan right around Hart Celler in 1970. I can't wait to hear her story. And perhaps we'll get to meet her daughter and her two beautiful grandchildren to talk about how cultural heritage, what cultural heritage means and how it's been passed down. And I want to recognize my colleague, Katie Miller from Perkins Center for the Arts, who's volunteered her mom, who came to Cuba. The family came to Cuba by way of Spain. And they just recently traveled back to the the Iberian village from whence they came. And if any of you out there, know somebody or you want to volunteer yourselves to join the project, reach out to me and Iveta, please.
Yeah, thank you, Marion. I am sure that we'll have a few minutes for final thoughts after the music. So can we jump into the music now?
Of course. But you want me to start?
Who would like to do it first?
You have so many things. Let me start with something
Pepe, go ahead.
from the mountain.
Thank you. Thank you, Pepe.
You're
Thank you very much.
welcome. Okay. What else?
Well, Michael is asking you, what's the last woodwind instrument you played a roncador?
Which one? This one?
The last one that you played, was it a roncador? This is his question.
This one?
I think the long one. Yeah, this one. He was asking how do you call the instrument?
This instrument in Peru is called roncadora,
Yes, it is. So, Michael, you have your answer. It is.
but it's the same. It's based on the tabor pipe. It's played together with the drum all the time.
All right.
In the past, perhaps after the conquest, they imported this kind of instrument to the Andes, and the natives decided to copy that and create their own scale.
All right.
It's a wonderful instrument. Yes,
Thank you. Thank you, Pepe.
you are welcome.
Nina, would you like to go next, or Nadine? Who would prefer?
Nina?
To play my video. So whenever, so this is a guzheng instrument, like I said before. This I believe is a song called Flowing Springs in the High Peaks. So this one's called Lady Mokjiang.
Fantastic, fantastic. And
Beautiful.
you're getting praises in the chat.
Oh, thanks.
Yogesh found it beautiful and very soothing. And Ken says, wow, I felt that very deeply, Nina. So
Yeah.
moving.
That's what it draws me to this instrument too. The sound of this instrument is very soothing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sound. Nadine, would you like to share one?
Mhm. So it's just going to be my voice tonight. We tried every way and got new equipment to try to get the digital accompaniment to work, just wouldn't work. So I'm just going to give you my raw voice and my heart and soul. I'll give you two songs that I'll just kind of meld into one. The first one is called Peze Café, and it's a song about a kid who went to the market to get coffee. She was supposed to just get the coffee and go home, but some melee, came about in the middle of it. She ended up getting arrested, and everything else. Now she has to go back home into the village, and she's wondering on the way home, what is she going to say when she gets there? Because village life is such that everybody knows everybody. So everybody's going to know your story and it's going to pass from house to house. And then the next song is a harvest song called Merci Bon Dieu, and it's giving thanks to the Most High for the harvest. And there's a word in IT called kombit, and it's a communal agricultural coming together of the people. Everyone in the village comes together to support one farm, to support in growing the food and also harvesting the food. And then they just go from one farm to the other to the other. So no family is left all alone to do all that work. So this idea of the kombit, where we do collective work and responsibility, basically. So this song is giving thanks for nature. Look what nature has brought to us. See how the rain is falling and the corn is growing. Every child who's hungry is able to eat. So we dance the Congo, we dance the Petwo, because the Most High has taken all the misery away from us. The misery is over, because here comes the harvest. So that's what this song is about. Haitian songs have a completely different melody. I don't know if there's a Taino connection to that or not, the original indigenous people there, but there's like this kind of flow going up and down, this fall into the blues. All right, so this is Peze Café into Merci Bon Dieu. Maman voyem peze café, an animal met what time j'en amaretim. Maman voyem peze café, an animal met what time j'en amaretim. Ça m'a fait la caille, elle m'arrivée. Oh, mes amis, ça m'a fait la caille, elle m'arrivée. Oui, oui, ça m'a fait la caille, elle m'arrivée. 20 tripotailles, ça m'a fait la caille, elle m'arrivée. Oui. Merci, bon Dieu, gardez qui j'en la misère finie pour nous. Merci, bon Dieu, gardez tout ça, la nature, portez pour nous. Merci, bon Dieu, gardez qui j'en la misère finie pour nous. Merci, bon Dieu, gardez tout ça, la nature, portez pour nous. La pluie tombée, maïs poussé, tout le monde qui grand goût aller manger. En nous dans ces Congo, en nous dans ces pétro. Papa, bon Dieu, dit dans ciel, la misère finie. Papa bon Dieu dit nan c'est la misère fini pour nous, misère fini pour nous, misère nous fini. Papa bon Dieu dit nan c'est la misère fini pour nous, misère fini, misère fini, misère fini en moi. Aïe, misère fini pour nous, misère fini pour nous, misère fini. Woy.
Wow, absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. We have wow in the chat for you, Nadine. It was really, really fantastic. And you see, your voice is more than enough to tell the story. Don't worry about technicality. So, well, people seem to have loved all the musical examples. And what we were trying to achieve with that is to have the different sounds basically for so the very different parts of the globe. I mean, you have Haiti and the high Andes and China in our discussion mixed together, talking about yes, we are different and yes, we're all human beings. And this is what we are sharing with each other in this conversation. This is wonderful. So
I would love to hear from the chat. It seems that
well, someone is pardon my ignorance, hearing the French in second one was the first one in a different tongue, is a question from Roseana.
they're both in Haitian Creole, which is a mix of French and many different African languages. So you'll hear a lot of French in Creole spoken. It's a revolutionary language that people had to create a way to communicate with one another during the resistance. Enslaved peoples so that they can get into the mountains to create the Maroon Army. So French had to be placed in front, and then everyone from the different 21 nations gave, phrases and words to the language, and also sentence structure and things like that, so that in the presence of, let's say, for example, overseers, you could literally have a conversation about what the next strategy would be, like in the language, in a turn of a phrase, or in a song that was being sung, in the fields, for example. You could literally be, sharing coded, messages of what's to come next. So yeah, sometimes you'll hear words that are clearly African, and then there are times when you hear words that are clearly French, or like a mix. So they were both in Creole, actually.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Nadine.
that question.
Well, the others are not questions, they're comments. Loving wonderful music by all. We have Katie wrote just your heart and voice was amazing. I thank you for sharing them both and all your wise words. And Marilyn said, what a gift to hear these artists, and just thanks. And I think this is just, you will be able to see this in the chat later on. I was mostly looking to see if there is a question for you, but no, they're mostly appreciative words for you.
Thank you, everybody.
That was wonderful. And I think that maybe now is the time for you to share a final thought. It's already 7:30. If we want to share a final thought before we close the discussion.
Maybe
Yes.
Pam can
Great.
just show that last flyer of the event. Yeah, that's the AAPI celebration event for this Sunday. You can come anytime between 12 to 3:30. There will be a lot of dance and singing from different groups, Filipinos, Cambodian, Chinese, and Korean. I think those are the major groups. And there are a lot of food, obviously. There's always food. So we try to do this once a year to bring the communities together and to introduce different groups to the wider the Cherry Hill, the local South Jersey communities as well. So it's open to everyone. It's free to attend.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you very much.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to it.
Yes.
We'll have a table there.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, and Indian dance, Bollywood, that's right.
All right. Thank you, Nina.
Pepe, would you like to talk about this really briefly?
What do you want me to go about?
Just how people can learn more about the programs that you offer.
Okay, they have to call me, or they can contact me at the email at the bottom that you see, juanjsantana@optonline.net. You can contact me there, and I will give you all the information you are looking for.
All right. Well, this is
You
a
can contact
way
also
to say it.
either the Perkins Center or Wheaton Center. They also have my information.
We will be sharing your contact information at the end of this conversation, but if people cannot write it down quickly, they can always email me or Pamela, and we can give them your email contact.
And if Nina, if people are interested in inviting you to perform at their library, cultural organization, should they reach out to you directly, or if you
can.
contact me, I can put you in touch?
That's
Oh,
fine.
there you go.
Either way is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, if anybody would like to stay in contact or reach out to any of our artists today or our moderators, you can do so using the information on the screen. If you cannot capture, as Iveta said, quickly, then we can certainly send it to you.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you very much. And we already have a suggestion in the chat that we should do a part 2 of this discussion. It seems that, well, this topic is really vast, very complicated, and cannot be in one discussion that we can say it all, but it's a good beginning. Very good beginning. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you.
Dr. Pirgova, to your point, I would like to share a final thought, and I'll try not to make it too long because I tend to get passionate, about these things. Maybe you might have noticed.
It's good that you're passionate. We're happy about this, Nadine.
Right on. I just wanted to encourage us to use this opportunity to create relatives amongst one another. We have opportunities, for example, from Nina and from Pepe to come and share any events, that they're offering to the communities. And so there are just so many, what makes this thing that we're trying to do, right? This experiment, the United States, right? With all of these different people from everywhere that you could possibly imagine, is that we have access to one another, to so many ways of being, to so many approaches to life. And so if we can access through, events like this, through gatherings, through conversations like this, if we seek out each other in understanding and then just broaden what we think of as our people, right? Especially at this time. And what I'm saying isn't mine, it's indigenous thought, to create relatives. If we can use this opportunity, conversations like that, to think in that way and create intentional communities through these kind of immersive, moments where we can just participate and just be part of music from, another experience, another culture, deeply, deeply immerse ourselves into it so that we can understand a point of view, a different point of view, and make that memory now a part of who we are moving forward. So that's pretty much it. Just using this opportunity and creating more. Let's not stop here. Let's not use this as an interesting and entertaining conversation to have, but as an inspiration to action, to deeply connect with one another, like moving forward as a way of being.
Very beautifully said, Nadine. Thank you very much. I can't add any more to this. This was really well said.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to everybody who.
Well, I can say something about this.
Yes.
Sam just said this is yet another conversation that we will be having this Saturday in the Folklife Center. And it is, again, about immigration and cultural heritage, South Jersey. But this event is in person in the building of the Folklife Center. And if you would like to join us, please email me directly because the building is small and we have limited seating. And if you cannot see my email on the slide here, it's on our website.
And on our final slide, we'll post your email so people can grab it there. If you've enjoyed this Wheaton conversation, I invite everybody to visit WheatonArts.org, which is our website, to register for our next Wheaton Conversation program. It will be with our Summer 2025 Creative Glass Fellows. They are Chris Ruman and Rebecca Arday, and they will join us on Thursday, June 26th. So if you're interested in future programs like this, please do register. And if you would like to connect with Iveta, her email is there. Please feel free to download the chat if there's anything in there that you would like to preserve, or you could reach out to us by email and we can provide you with that text. We would love to hear from those that are either new to the series or to Wheaton Arts. So please feel free to contact us with any open-ended questions, comments, or anything you would like to share with us. We are here to listen. We sincerely thank you for being here, and we hope that you join us once again. Have a great evening, everybody. Bye-bye.